My name is Zuri, and I've never been ashamed of the life I live. I work hard, I keep my head down, and I try to do right by people. Nairobi is not an easy city, but I've managed to carve out a simple routine that keeps me grounded. I spend most of my days at the small clothing store where I work. It isn't glamorous, but it's honest, and I'm proud of the way I treat customers with patience and respect. My younger sister, Lindai, couldn't be more different from me. She loves the spotlight, the designer handbags, the flashy cars. Whenever she walks into a room, she makes sure everyone notices her outfit, her jewelry, her expensive perfume. She believes a person's worth is measured by what they can show off, not who they truly are. And because she's always flaunting her lifestyle, people give her the attention she craves. One Sunday afternoon, during a family gathering, Lindau decided to make me her joke. The house was full of relatives, everyone laughing, eating, and catching up. Out of nowhere, she leaned back in her chair and said loudly, "Imagine spending your whole life as a cashier, folding shirts, punching receipts. A cashier with no future." Her friends, and even some of my cousins, burst into laughter. The room echoed with it. I felt my cheeks burn, my stomach twist, but I didn't say a word. I just smiled faintly and lowered my eyes to my plate. Inside, though, the sting cut deep. That moment stayed with me. The next morning, I was back at the clothing store before the sun had fully risen. The shop sits on a busy street in Nairobi, right where the buses stop and people flow in and out all day. By the time I unlocked the doors, a small line of early customers was already waiting. I greeted them with a smile, swept the floor quickly, and switched on the lights. That's how most of my days begin, quietly, with my hands full and my heart steady. The shifts are long. I often stand for hours, folding and arranging clothes, handling receipts, helping customers find the right size, or giving advice on what suits them best. Many people walk in tired or frustrated after a long day in the city, but they leave lighter because I treat them kindly. Some customers come back not just for the clothes, but for the way I make them feel welcome. They'll say things like, "Zuri, you always know what looks good on me," or "This store feels different, peaceful." Those words carry me through the tired evenings when my feet ache. What no one around me knows, not even my closest relatives, is that the store isn't just where I work. It's mine. Every hanger, every shelf, every piece of fabric, I own it all. Years ago, I saved every shilling I could and put it into building something small but steady. Still, I choose to stand behind the counter like any employee because I never wanted to sit in an office barking. I believe real respect comes from doing the work, not from boasting about it. Sometimes, when customers watch me manage the shop so smoothly, restocking, negotiating with suppliers, keeping the books balanced, they tilt their heads and wonder aloud. "You run this place like it's yours," one man once said with a laugh. I just smiled and shrugged. Another woman whispered to her friend that I seemed too smart to be just a cashier. Their words always make my heart skip, but I never confirm anything. I'd rather people see me as someone ordinary, someone who values humility more than recognition. Still, small hints escape. The way the staff look at me with respect, the way I handle big decisions quietly, the way I seem to know every detail about how the business runs. A few observant people suspect there's more to me than I let on, but most never think twice. They just see a simple woman folding shirts and treating them kindly. At the end of a long shift, after the last customer has left and the street outside has gone quiet, I lock the doors and take a deep breath. The store feels like home, not just because I work there, but because it's a piece of me. I walk away in the evening shadows, blending into the crowd, carrying my secret like a flame in my chest. Someday the truth will come out, but for now, I'm content to keep it hidden. It was a bright Saturday afternoon when Lindai walked into the store, her heels clicking loudly on the tiled floor. I was arranging a new delivery of dresses near the front, carefully folding each one to display it neatly. I looked up and saw her walk in with two of her glamorous friends, all of them laughing as though the world was theirs. They carried designer handbags and wore sunglasses even though we were indoors. I greeted them politely, the same way I greeted every customer, though my chest tightened the moment I saw the smirk on my sister's face. She took her time strolling around, picking up clothes and putting them back without really looking. I could feel her eyes on me, waiting for the perfect chance to strike. And then it came. She leaned against a rack of shirts, tilted her head, and said loud enough for everyone in the shop to hear. "So this is your life, Zuri? Folding clothes every day?" A cashier with a ruler-straight life. Her friends burst into laughter, one of them even clutching her stomach, as if it were the funniest joke she'd ever heard. A few other customers turned to watch, their faces awkward, unsure whether to laugh or stay quiet. My hands froze on the stack of dresses. For a moment, I felt like the whole room was spinning around me, like every pair of eyes was staring at the poor woman being ridiculed by her flashy sister. I wanted to answer back, to tell her that things aren't always what they seem, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I gave her the same polite smile I gave strangers and said softly, "Can I help you with something?" That only fueled her laughter. She looked at her friends and whispered something, and they all giggled again, glancing at me as though I were part of a comedy show. Inside, my heart ached. I could feel the sting of her words deep in my chest, the same way they stung during the family gathering. I had promised myself not to let her cruel comments break me, but standing there in front of my customers, treated like I was nothing, cut deeper than I expected. My pride and dignity felt small in that moment, buried under their laughter. Still, I stood tall. I adjusted the dresses, smoothed the fabric, and carried on with my work as if nothing had happened. The customers who respected me gave me sympathetic looks, and one woman even avoided buying anything, clearly uncomfortable with Lindau's behavior. But my sister didn't notice or care. She strutted out of the store with her friends, still laughing, leaving behind a trail of whispers and heavy silence. When the door finally closed behind them, I exhaled slowly. I told myself again that silence is sometimes stronger than anger. Yet deep down, the wound remained, sharp and unspoken. I knew one day things would change, but for now, I had to swallow the pain and keep moving. People often saw me as just a shop girl behind the counter, but the truth went much deeper. Years ago, before the store even existed, I had made choices that changed my life quietly. It started small, with money I saved from my first jobs. I lived simply, ate plainly, and never wasted even a coin on things I didn't need. While Lindau chased handbags and shoes, I was reading books about business, watching how people spent their money, and studying which ideas could grow. I remember the first risk I took. A friend introduced me to a small tailoring business that was struggling. Everyone thought it was a sinking boat, but I saw potential. With the little savings I had, I invested. I didn't shout about it, didn't tell anyone. I worked alongside the tailors, learned about fabrics, and helped organize their sales. Slowly, the business grew. That was the seed. From then on, I kept my eyes open for opportunities. Every shilling I earned, I multiplied. I invested in food stalls, beauty shops, and later, bigger ventures. Some ideas failed, but most took off because I gave them my full attention and never let greed blind me. Over time, my money grew, and so did my confidence. That's how I became a silent partner in Uhuru Mall when it was just a plan on paper. I believed in it when others doubted. Years passed, shops filled the space, people flooded the halls, and slowly, quietly, I became the majority owner. The store where I stand every day, folding clothes and smiling at customers, is only one piece of the empire. There are dozens of outlets under my management, cafes, boutiques, electronics shops, all running under the roof of Uhuru Mall. I could have easily sat in an office, hidden behind glass walls, letting managers do the work. But that's never been me. I wanted to feel the heartbeat of the business. I wanted to know what the customers wanted, what the staff went through, and what it meant to serve people directly. So I chose the clothing store as my spot. To outsiders, I was just Zuri the cashier. To myself, I was Zuri the builder, the woman who planted seeds and watched them grow. I never flaunted my wealth, never arrived in flashy cars or covered myself in jewelry. That kind of life belonged to my sister, who thought showing off meant she was winning. For me, true power was in silence, in walking among people unnoticed, in knowing I could buy and sell what others worshipped, yet choosing not to boast. Sometimes at night, I would sit by the window of my small home, sip tea, and look at the glowing lights of the mall. Nobody knew that those lights burned because of me. And honestly, I preferred it that way. My secret was safe for now. The family dinner was supposed to be a warm evening, the kind where everyone gathers to share food and laughter. My mother had cooked a feast, and the table was heavy with ugali, stew, roasted meat, and bowls of vegetable. Relatives filled the house, voices rising over one another as children ran around. I sat quietly near the end of the table, enjoying the meal, listening more than speaking. Lindau, of course, was the star of the night. She arrived late, sweeping into the room in a sparkling dress, her perfume filling the air before she even spoke. Her husband followed behind, carrying a bottle of imported wine, which she made sure to announce loudly. Straight from Paris. The room buzzed with admiration. My parents' faces lit up, their pride obvious. Throughout dinner, she never stopped talking about her husband's business trips, the luxury hotels they stayed in, the expensive car he had just bought her. "Life is sweet when you marry well," she said with a laugh, swirling her wine glass. Then her eyes shifted to me, and her tone sharpened. "Not everyone is lucky, of course. Some people are still folding clothes in small shops, while others are flying first class." The table erupted in chuckles, some nervous, some genuine. My parents didn't correct her. In fact, my mother added softly, "Zuri, you should learn from your sister. She made the right choices." My father nodded in agreement, telling Lindiwe how proud he was of her. Their words stung more than Lindiwe's mockery. It was as if my years of sacrifice and hard work meant nothing. I kept my face calm, my hands steady as I broke a piece of ugali. Inside, though, the hurt was deep. I wanted to tell them that I wasn't just surviving, that I had built something far greater than any of them imagined. But I swallowed the truth, the way I always did. I knew it wasn't time yet. Revealing everything too soon would only look like bragging, and that wasn't who I was. As the night went on, Lindiwe continued to dominate the conversation. She spoke about shopping in Dubai, about the diamond bracelet on her wrist, about how her friends envy her. Each story seemed designed to make me look smaller, to remind everyone at the table of the gap between us. My cousins laughed along, dazzled by her tales, while I quietly sipped my water, watching and listening. But even as her voice filled the room, I felt something shift inside me. The constant humiliation, the way my parents overlooked me, the smug smile on my sister's face. It all made me realize that the day to reveal the truth was not far away. I didn't need to fight for attention or raise my voice. My moment would come on its own, and when it did, no one would ever look at me the same way again. The news spread quickly across Nairobi. Uhuru Mall was about to celebrate its 5th anniversary. Flyers went up on walls, radio stations made announcements, and social media buzzed with excitement. It wasn't just another mall. It had become the heart of the city, a place where families shopped, friends met, and children laughed in the play area. Everyone was talking about the upcoming celebration, because the event promised to be grand. There would be music, food, performances, and most importantly, a special moment to honor the mall's mysterious owner. That was the part that stirred the most curiosity. For 5 years, people had wondered who stood behind the success of the mall. Rumors swirled. Some said it must be a foreign investor. Others believed it was a politician hiding his money, while some thought it was an old tycoon who preferred to stay in the shadows. Nobody ever guessed the truth. Lindiwe, of course, couldn't stop gossiping about it. She sat with her friends in a cafe, her voice carrying across the tables. "It has to be a man," she said confidently, flipping her hair. "Only a rich man with connections could own something as big as Uhuru Mall. Maybe some millionaire hiding from the spotlight. Whoever he is, I hope he shows up at the party. I'd love to meet him." Her friends giggled, nodding in agreement, their imaginations running wild. She went on about how lucky the mall's owner must be, how much money he probably had, and how she would recognize real wealth when she saw it. I happened to overhear her one afternoon when she stopped by our parents' house, still chattering about the celebration. She even said, "Zuri should come to the event too. At least she'll get to see how successful people live." Her words cut, but I stayed quiet as always. Inside, I felt a mix of emotions. I was proud of how far the mall had come, of the jobs it had created, of the families who relied on it. But I also carried the weight of my secret heavily. For 5 years, I had chosen silence. I let others guess and gossip, never once confirming or denying. Now, the celebration would change everything. The mall's management team had insisted it was time to reveal the owner, to honor the work behind the success. My heart raced whenever I thought of that moment. The city buzzed louder each day as the event approached. Posters showed fireworks and promised surprises. Stores inside the mall decorated their windows with gold banners and special offers. Customers talked about how they couldn't wait to attend, how it would be the event of the year. And there I was, folding clothes at my store counter, listening to everyone around me dream about a faceless rich man, while knowing that the truth was sitting quietly behind the counter all along. I didn't say a word. I simply smiled. My moment was coming. The day of the celebration finally arrived, and the mall was glowing like never before. Bright banners hung from the walls, lights sparkled across the entrance, and a stage was set up in the middle of the open courtyard. Music filled the air, mixing with the chatter of hundreds of excited people. Families, business owners, city officials, and curious guests all gathered to witness the event. I dressed simply, the same way I always did. A soft blue dress, plain shoes, and a small handbag. Nothing about me screamed wealth or power. As I walked into the crowd, nobody paid me any special attention. People brushed past, too busy finding good seats or taking selfies with the decorations. Even my own sister looked right through me. Lindiwe stood near the front with her friends, dazzling in a glittering gown, her jewelry catching every look. She didn't even greet me, too caught up in her excitement. I heard her whispering to her friends, "The owner must be here somewhere. Watch, he'll show up in a shiny suit with bodyguard." They all laughed, sipping their drinks. The program began with music and speeches from city leaders, who praised the mall for boosting the economy and creating jobs. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. The host stepped forward, holding the microphone, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, smiling, "today we not only celebrate 5 wonderful years of Uhuru Mall, but we also honor the visionary behind it all. Tonight, the mystery ends. It's time to meet the true owner of this great mall. The crowd leaned forward, buzzing with excitement. I stood quietly near the side, my heart pounding. Then suddenly the spotlight shifted. It landed on me. For a second, the entire place froze. People turned their heads, searching, confused. Then whispers began. Her? The cashier? Is this a mistake? That's Zuri. I lifted my chin and took a slow step forward. My sister's face was the first I saw clearly. Her jaw dropped open, her eyes wide in shock, her hand frozen around her glass. She didn't laugh this time. She couldn't. The truth was written all over the stage, all over the faces now staring at me with awe. The applause began slowly, almost uncertain, then grew into a roar. People clapped, cheered, and some even stood on their feet. Customers who had known me as the kind woman behind the counter now looked at me with admiration, realizing I was more than they ever guessed. I walked up to the stage, my steps steady, my smile calm. There was no need to show off or pretend. The moment itself was powerful enough. When I reached the microphone, I looked at the sea of faces and let the applause wash over me. My secret was no longer mine. It belonged to the world now. And my sister, who once mocked me for folding clothes, stood frozen in the crowd, watching as her cashier sister took her rightful place under the light. The applause from the celebration still rang in my ears long after the night ended. Everywhere I turned, people were congratulating me, shaking my hand, thanking me for building something that had touched so many lives. But in the middle of all that joy, I couldn't help noticing my sister's face. Linda stood stiff, her smile forced, her eyes darting around as if she wanted to disappear. At first, she tried to laugh it off. When a cousin teased her, asking, "So, this is the cashier you mocked?" She waved her hand and said, "Oh, come on, I was only joking." We all laugh sometimes. Her laugh was too high-pitched, too nervous. But nobody joined her. People remembered too well the way she used to brag at family gathering, the cruel things she had said to me. Those words now hung in the air, replayed in everyone's mind. No amount of fake laughter could erase them. Later that evening, she pulled me aside, away from the crowd. Her voice dropped, shaky and rushed. "Zuri, you know I didn't mean it like that. We're sisters. I was just teasing you all those times. Please don't hold it against me." She even tried to hold my hand, her painted nails trembling slightly. For a moment, I just looked at her, remembering every time she had sneered at me, every laugh that had cut me down in front of others. But it wasn't only about me anymore. Everyone had witnessed her arrogance. My parents, who once dismissed my efforts, now looked at me with pride. Aunts and uncles who used to favor Linda whispered among themselves, saying, "Zuri was the wise one all along." Even the younger cousins, who once admired Linda's flashy lifestyle, now gazed at me with shining eyes. The balance had shifted completely, and she knew it. Linda tried again, her voice softer this time. "You understand, right?" I didn't know. I didn't realize. Her words trailed off, because there was no excuse that could undo the years of mockery. Her desperation was clear. She wasn't just afraid of losing me, she was afraid of losing the respect of everyone else. And in truth, that respect was already gone. I didn't humiliate her. I didn't shout or remind her of her cruelty. I simply smiled gently and said, "It's all right, Linda." My voice was calm, almost kind, though she could see in my eyes that things would never be the same. She searched my face for warmth, but all she found was dignity. That night, as I walked back to my car, I could feel the shift in the air. Family members who once overlooked me now stopped to embrace me, their voices full of admiration. "We are so proud of you, Zuri," they said. Behind me, I could hear the silence around Linda growing heavier. Her laughter no longer charmed anyone. Her pride, once her crown, had become her shame. When the noise of the celebration finally settled, and it was time for me to speak, I stood in front of the microphone and took a deep breath. The spotlight was still on me, but I didn't let it make me nervous. I wasn't there to prove anything to my sister, or even to my family. I was there for the people who had supported the mall, the staff who worked long hours, and the community that had made it thrive. I began simply. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "Thank you to the people of Nairobi, to every customer who has walked through these doors, to every staff member who has stood behind a counter with a smile, and to every cleaner who has kept these halls shining. This place exists because of you." The crowd clapped, and I could see many employees' eyes glistening as they listened. I didn't talk about wealth or power. Instead, I shared what I believed. Life is not about mocking others or measuring success by handbags and cars. It's about working hard, respecting people, and building something that lasts. I started small, just like many of you. And if I can do it, so can you. The words flowed easily, not like a speech, but like advice from the heart. As I spoke, I noticed my younger cousins standing close to the stage. For years, they had idolized Linda, dazzled by her flashy clothes and loud confidence. But now their eyes were on me. They were listening, really listening, and I knew my words were planting seeds in their hearts. Seeds of humility, of patience, of the belief that true success doesn't need to shout. I could feel Lindy behind me somewhere in the crowd. I knew she was burning with shame, waiting for me to expose her, to humiliate her in the same way she had humiliated. But I didn't. I had no need. Instead, I chose forgiveness, not just for her, but for myself too. Carrying bitterness would only weigh me down. So I ended with this. Never mock humble beginnings. You don't know the story behind someone's struggle, and you don't know what empire they might be building in silence. Treat everyone with kindness. You might be surprised who they really are. The applause that followed was thunderous. It wasn't just for me, it was for the message. I saw people nodding, whispering to each other, touched by the truth of it. Employees hugged each other, customers clapped, and my family members looked at me with a new kind of respect that words can't capture. That night, as the music played and the fireworks lit up the sky, I felt lighter. My story was no longer hidden, and my response had set me free. I hadn't humiliated my sister, I had chosen grace. And in that choice, I had won more than her apology. I had won hearts. After the celebration, life began to shift in quiet but powerful ways. Lindy, once the center of every conversation, found herself standing on shaky ground. Her friends, who had laughed along with her jokes about me, slowly pulled away. They no longer saw her as the shining star she thought she was. Whispers followed her instead. People remembered her arrogance, the way she mocked me, and now they looked at her with pity rather than admiration. Her pride, once so loud, began to crumble in silence. For me, nothing really changed on the surface. I still woke up early, still visited the store, still greeted customers with the same warmth. But now, when people saw me behind the counter, they didn't just see a cashier. They saw strength, patience, and quiet success. The respect in their eyes was different, deeper. My businesses continued to grow, but I remained the same Zuri, humble, steady, and grateful. One evening, a week after the big reveal, I walked through Uhuru Mall with my young son. His tiny hand held mine tightly as we strolled past the shops. Shoppers paused to smile, some whispering to each other, others nodding respectfully. I could feel their admiration, not because I was rich, but because I had carried myself with dignity. My son looked up at me proudly, his innocent eyes reflecting everything I had fought for. As we walked beneath the glowing lights of the mall, I felt the message written in my heart. Never mock humble beginnings. You don't know the empire behind them.